Hey, welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host. And today I have a very special episode. If you've listened to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast before, you know that I started my business, my Christian coaching business, in December of 2018, just hoping I could make it, hoping I could earn 60 grand. God had bigger plans. I collected over 250 grand of revenue my first year in business and have been able to grow since then. I help Christian coaches optimize their business models, their pricing, their sales strategies. Primarily what I help people with is selling more, especially Christians who I know have a hard time with that and have mindset blocks around it, strategy blocks, want to do it with integrity, want to do it well. That's what this podcast is all about. And you're used to hearing just from me most often 10, 15, 20-minute episodes, just chopping it up about sales and business, actionable. And today I'm having a guest. I'm having my friend Trent Booth on the show, and Trent is one of my favorite people. Even just talking to him as we warmed up and got ready for the episode, I just find myself smiling. I love the way he reflects on things. I love the way he puts things together. He's got my favorite voice in the world, my number one favorite voice. This guy's got a radio voice. He's got a podcast voice. You'll like him just hearing his voice. And we met in the Cutco world. He was a legend. He was a national guy in the direct sales world, doing big things, impacting people, coaching people, helping people for years and years and years. Launched his own coaching business later, Veritas Leadership Group, and immediately built a six-figure coaching business, incredibly successful there, helping people become better leaders and really, I feel like, step into who God created them to be. He's a great Christian leader and a great Christian coach. My friend, Trent Booth, welcome to the show.
Justin, thanks for having me, man. This is many, many months in the making, and I think it's going to be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I want to break this episode into three parts. As we were talking prior to the episode, I want to really honor the show that we have and the way that we show up, and I really want to honor the conversation with you. And so I imagine that we will start with part one being about your origin story. Where'd you come from? How did we get to know each other? How did Veritas Leadership Group come about, and what is it all about? Part two, let's talk sales and business. Let's get into the actionable stuff. What are some of your favorite sales strategies? What's working for you? How did you build a six-figure coaching business successfully? And then part three, let's talk about leadership. Let's get into what you do and what you love that so many of our listeners, so many other Christian coaches love as well, which is helping people become better leaders. And then let's talk about how people can find you from there. That sound good?
It's amazing.
That's my pre-frame, by the way. I love pre-frame. So that's what's coming next. Trent, tell us about you. Tell us about how you became Trent Booth, six-figure Christian leadership coach.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And I'm glad you asked it that way, because some people are like, Trent, you're the man. And I'm like, dude, I'm not even the only Trent Booth. There's literally 8 Trent Booths in the world. At last count, there might be more born since then, but like, I'm the oldest, which makes me Trent Booth Prime. So I was born, I just turned 50 this year, up in Canada. I was in Canada until 20 years ago. Started working at Cutco Cutlery at the age of 19, and fast-tracked through management there. Moved to the States about 20 years ago, outside Philadelphia. We were a young family at the time. Now our family's all grown and kind of moved away. But after 30 years at Cutco, I retired after 30 years at Cutco, but right about the 10-year, 12-year mark, I started doing coaching. And didn't really know what it was on the front end. I was the beneficiary of a coach, Marty Dimitrovich, who actually coached me for 8 sessions before he passed away. When he passed away, he left a bit of a gaping hole at that company. And I didn't see myself as a Marty, but I'm like, I can help people. And if I've got extra time, let me get the work that they're paying me to do done, and then I'll just engage with people and ask some questions. And it worked really well. And some of the people I was coaching started to become outliers. And then I went and got certified at the John Maxwell Group. And as more people succeeded, the company created a leadership development department. They spent millions of dollars over the next decade or so pouring into their team. And if we can help people grow and raise their awareness and have better choices, they make better decisions and they grow. So after doing that for a number of years, I was curious. I'm like, Justin, could I do this outside of Vector? I don't have experience in those other worlds, but if I can ask good questions here, could I ask good questions there once I learned their language? And it turned out that was going very well too. So about, I would say 8 years before I left Vector, I kind of started a side gig where I was helping companies outside of the Vector, Cutco, and then decided back in about 2 years ago to branch out, leave the home company after 30 years and retire and start Veritas Leadership Group so I could do this just more of this and kind of bring it on more of a global level. Well, fast forward, I think 8 months into me being solo for the first time, listening to a podcast, and Justin Janowski is just crushing it. And I listened regularly, but this one really captured my attention. I was driving and I was like, man, if I could just connect with this guy, I'm pretty confident he can help me. I love the way that you were a Christian coach. You testified in a very winsome way on a non-Christian podcast. And I was just so inspired. I thought to myself, boy, I don't know Justin directly, but maybe he's heard my name. We know a lot of the same people. If I reach out to him on Facebook Messenger, maybe he'll respond. And of course, he totally did. And by the way, I'm not telling you, your audience, to go and reach out to you on Facebook Messenger. However,
They
so
can.
grateful that
They can.
I mean, I love this because I would say that guy's a celebrity. He's a big deal, and immediately responded. I'd love to connect. And you know what? I'm a fan of growing up in Canada, Anne of Green Gables, and she says kindred spirits. Her and Diana are kindred spirits. When you meet a kindred spirit, you meet somebody that's aligned philosophically, spiritually. I was like, dude, did we just become best friends? First call. Yup. You want to do karate in the garage? Yup. And all of a sudden, we're going deep. I joined your mastermind group. That was not a small investment, worth every penny of it. And as we've connected over the past year, you've become a very close confidant, very good friend. And I love and celebrate all the things you're doing at the CCA, the Christian Coaching Academy, and your sales school. And a couple months ago, we were just having random conversations saying, would you let me come on your podcast? I know it's not what you do, but can I just come on and gush about how your work has helped me? And I know it's helping other coaches, Christians, and people who wouldn't identify as that, because the content is just so good and so solid. So Justin, thank you for your generosity to not only connect and teaching me terms like net giver and showing up like large. I see how you show up, not just for me, but for others in your sphere and for people that might not have the same star power as I had when we met, but you just show up the same for everybody. So thanks for having me on this episode. I'm excited to dig in here. Yeah. I think I checked all the boxes for
That was
Origin
good.
Story. Is that pretty good?
Thank you for sharing all of that. And it's funny. I remember you telling me that on the first call and reflecting on it a couple times later that like you had this moment, like, I wonder if I could message him and if he'd respond, which just sounds like the funniest thing in the world to me. The podcast I was on was Changing Lives, Selling Knives. It's the podcast for Cutco alum. Yeah. And it was like kind of a dream for me to be on that podcast. And it was cool to imagine and remember like wanting to be on that podcast and knowing that my brand is forward with faith and Christian, and like, how can I be myself in a non-Christian environment and also provide great value to the non-Christian listeners? And it was such a great compliment to know that the episode meant a lot to you, and the way you reached out and how you even like presupposed that there was a chance I wouldn't respond made me feel like you were living in a different world than I was. And it just, I was like
fanboying a little bit. I'm not going to lie. So, and again, as one that within our microcosm at Cutco Vector, I was kind of celebrated as a celebrity. So like, I don't take it lightly, but also, who's this Trent Booth guy tracking me down? I was just hoping you would be on Facebook enough to even know that Messenger's a thing, because our generation doesn't really get that.
And I knew who you were from Cutco, and you did have that kind of celebrity personality at this big direct sales company, and it was an honor for you to reach out, and it's been an honor to become your friend. And one of the things that I think about all the time is who you are as a dad and who you are as a father and how much I respect you in those environments, let alone like all the business stuff that you've done and accomplished. I have things in my phone, reminders in my phone that are from you, that like the other day, my wife saw, I named one of my alarms after a piece of dad wisdom you gave me, just so that like when I set like a morning alarm or an afternoon alarm or whatever, like I will see that again throughout my life and be reminded of it. And it was this question that you ask your daughters, your kids, which is, do you need to be helped, hugged, or heard? And my wife saw that and she's like, what's this? I'm like, that's my reminder from Trent. That's from my dad wisdom that I received from you earlier this year. Do you need to be helped, hugged, or heard? And I feel like every time I talk to you, you just share real life wisdom that means a lot to me. So thank you for that. I do want to get into business. I want to get short and punchy here and dive in. tell us about Veritas Leadership Group. Why is it called that? And what do you
Yeah.
do?
Our kids went to classical education, so like Christian classical private school. So they're big on the trivium, and they learned Latin from first grade. So these kids are singing in Latin, and they're learning without even knowing it and having fun, but they're learning. And I was trying to big league, and I would use some Latin in some of my speeches when I was doing a lot of keynotes. And one of them was one of the sayings I would use was, I would say "nasce te ipsum," which means know thyself, but I was butchering the pronunciation. And I think at the time, 10-year-old, my oldest daughter, Katie, said, "Do you mean "nosce te ipsum"?" I'm like, totally that. So like I'm trying to big league and I'm butchering the Latin pronunciation corrected by my 10-year-old. So I was looking for a name. I didn't want to call it Trent Booth Leadership Group. I was hoping to have other coaches in the barn. And if I just named it under my own name, I just thought that would preclude that. So I wanted to have kind of a more forward thinking and inclusive name. Every Easter, you might hear Veritas when you hear Pontius Pilate talking about what is truth. And it's written, even though that portion of the Bible is not written in Latin, Ks Veritas, right? What is truth? So truth is Veritas in Latin. So, and the verse, if you seek the truth will set you free. So in coaching, the whole goal is to ask questions to raise awareness. And if we raise our awareness, or truth becomes more eminent, you've got a better shot of making better choices. So it was kind of a way, having spent most of my life, hear me, I've been a pastor as well in a church plant, so that's also on the resume, but most of my days spent in leadership development in a non-Christian environment. I might quote scripture, but not give an address. I might actually quote, hey, that might be permissible, but is it beneficial, from Corinthians? And people go, oh, that's really great. I'm like, I know it's Paul, but also I would find a way to kind of slip the vitamins, into the smoothie, so to speak. So using a term like a Veritas Leadership Group, people who are kind of in the know, if you know, it means truth. And that was kind of the impetus there. Veritas Leadership Group. Also, try to find something that you can Google. And, if you were to go a little deeper in it, it has a little bit of a deeper meaning.
Yeah.
So far, and I keep petitioning God on this one, like, hey, do you want this to be a Christian company for Christians only? And so far, it's not been a yes. So right now, not all of our coaches, even, for example, at our company, would identify as being a Christian. That said, is very, very Christian friendly. And of course, anybody working here would need to be morally and high character, all that type of thing. But all that is to say, we really wanted a friendly type of name that Christians might go, hey, is this guy, one of those type of thing? Because usually I'm not able to be as bold as you were on that Changing Lives, Selling Knives podcast. But I also loved how you were very winsome and are very winsome. So I would want your listeners to know, in fact, some of you listening to this podcast subscribed wouldn't identify as being a Christian. And when the content is just that good, it's kind of like when we've already mentioned the name today, but when you've got John Maxwell, people would read his book and go, I just love his content. I wouldn't say I'm a Christian, or go to church necessarily, but that's just really good stuff. And I think that your content here, for many of the coaches I've sent your way, like, oh no, that's really very excellent content, whether it's Christian or not. It's just very excellent content. So it's like friends of mine that listen to K-Love, but don't necessarily say, oh, I'm a Christian. They just like positive, inspiring music. I'm like, that works. That kind of fits.
That's awesome. Thanks for that share. So you wrote down, or I wrote down, truth for Veritas Leadership Group. And it's such an important word, such an important idea. I was having a conversation with our sales team this morning in a sales meeting, and we were talking about bringing greater boldness into our sales calls and letting go of the fear of judgment of what does this other person think of me right now on this sales call or on this coaching call, and instead making the call all about them and what do they need from us. And what they oftentimes need is challenge in the form of truth. And so we're coming across like Christian coaches, Christian entrepreneurs who are stuck at the starting line, who are stuck trying to pursue their goals, and they're stuck and they're repeating the same strategies and the same ideas over and over again, and they're not moving forward at all. And it's this insanity idea, right? And what they really need is a pattern interrupt. They need something to change. And oftentimes it begins with experiencing and receiving a truth. And so our challenge for our sales team that's so loving and cares about people is to love them and care about them enough to deliver truth or bold, difficult questions that lead to a greater realization and recognition of truth so that they're pattern can be interrupted and they can move in a new direction and actually start to get a different level of result. That's a roundabout way of me getting to say that what people really struggle with, so many coaches, so many people listening to this, is the launch of their business, successfully launching. The first sales are the hardest. And growing a six-figure business like you have, that's like a dream of so many of the coaches who probably listen to this podcast. Can you tell us what worked for you? Why were you able to get off the starting line? Why were you able to build a successful six-figure business? What were some of the strategies that you used? And then after that, I want to ask you about some of the sales strategies you're using now that are effective as you're continuing to grow. But if you think back to the early days,
Yeah.
how did you launch well and build a six-figure business?
Wonderful question, Justin. And part of what I celebrate about what you're doing for people here is there are many that I'll meet that want to have a third act, if you will. Hey, I've had a successful career in fill in the blank. And some of them are ready to retire, but still want to contribute. They still want to engage and do something kind of awesome. And coaching might be a great fit there. A very good friend of mine has been a pastor for 30 years. And was looking to transition into the marketplace and was kind of questioning or doubting some of his value that he was able to bring. The wisdom that this guy's learned over, without hyperbole, thousands of coaching conversations. But I would say he was doing the flip side of that, which is the counseling side of conversations. And what I was trying to encourage him was that a lot of the skills that he has will transfer, and to help him and to encourage him that, hey, listen, that counts. That experience still counts. There's a third act that I think you'll be an outstanding coach. And that wasn't my goal going in as we started having conversation about, hey, what else could you do? But when we looked at what his strengths are, I'm like, actually, if you haven't considered coaching, you really should. And so bringing that full circle back to, faith to influence, Justin, you're helping people who have that as a dream and helping them at the very, very grassroots type of level. So the idea that somebody could listen to this podcast and go, you know what, I want to qualify leaders. Trent Booth, I want to qualify leaders. I want somebody to say, you know what, I'm not junk. God made me, and he's given me a gift to be able to help other people. And so this work that you're doing is empowering people to bring that to the marketplace. And the idea that, not only is the best work still in front of you, I mean, man, if that is the goal, then let's help you. One of the things I'll ask new budding coaches is, in 5 years, you've helped a number of people. Let's call it dozens. Let's go meet them. Let's go find out who they are. Because the way that you see the world is very unique and very different. It's different than the way I see it. Let me share this quick story. When bringing on new coaches, part of my new thing has been to train up other coaches. And I love that I've got Faith to Influence to give them kind of the sales piece, because that's something that is necessary, but I'm not great at. You're not only great at, you love it. So I'm like, dude, this guy created content that would be a problem for me to solve. For you, it's a challenge to be celebrated. And it already exists, and it's excellent. It's great. That said, so some of the coaches that I started onboarding started working with people that I'd been coaching for years. Now, I was worried that there might be a Diet Coke type situation evolving. Experienced guy, brand new coach, how's that going to go? And I was surprised. I shouldn't have been, because the coaching process we're giving them is excellent, and they're curious. They ask great questions, and we're only hiring great people. They were getting people unstuck as a new coach in a way that I wasn't able to get them unstuck, because they had a different perspective. So one of my coaches is a mom, and she was coaching a mom I'd worked with for over a year. Mom has a breakthrough in her second session. The feedback I get is she's crying and it's a breakthrough. And I'm like, that's crazy. It's not crazy. The diversity of voices matters. And just like in scripture, how, the eye doesn't look at the foot and say you're not important. All of us are needed in the kingdom. And there are people that will only listen to this new coach, only get it. The coach will ask a question in a way that this coach will get them, in a way that I might not be able to reach them. And that diversity is so important. So when my oldest daughter, who's now 23, is interested in getting into coaching, and I can't wait for her to step into that world. The challenge being that nobody wants 3 roles if you're 23 years old: pastor, coach, surgeon, right? You probably want to be a little more time on the vine before you step into that world. But that said, that's her through point, is she can't wait to be a great coach. But the people listening to this are probably a little bit older. And my encouragement to you would be to consider not the gap, but what are the gains? So what do I bring to the table that is unique to me? What kind of gifting am I bringing to the table that can help me help other people? So let me bring this full circle back to then the coaching proposition. As we're presenting in sales, you and I were both blessed at Cutco. They had a great sales training program. And one of the things I've heard on your podcast many times is sales is not something that we do to people. It's something that we do for them. And to do that, we've got to empty ourselves of entitlement to outcome. So I'm going to present the very best way I can what I provide. If that is a great fit for you, we're going to work together. And if not, that is absolutely okay. And the way that you make people comfortable to present that without shame is everything. For people to say, listen, I'm going to present it. If they're a yes, wonderful. If not only is that okay, that's good. For me, I'd rather have a no today than a maybe. A no is okay. And to know that the sales process that I'm going to engage in is not going to be hoodwinking or smiling out the side of my mouth. I'm presenting very clearly what I do. There's value to it. And if there's a fit, they'll see it. And that is noble. So to be able to bring that in a way that is transparent, it's beautiful, to be able to empower Christian coaches. Because the reality is, if you want to be a Christian coach, you're going to have to get good at the sales piece. You're going to have to get good at presenting precisely what it is that you do, and trust that when you find the right fit, that sales process is irresistible. That doesn't mean there won't be objections, but if it's the right fit, it becomes easy. Now, hear me right. I should probably say simple, not easy. When there's the right fit, the people are going to want it, and it might even surprise you sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions.
Hit me.
Thank you for this, Trent. And I haven't prepared you for this at all. And I wasn't prepared for this. It's just coming through me. I've got a few rapid fire questions. What were 3 things that you did as a new coach that helped you launch successfully?
Yeah, one of the things I hit a lot is don't be afraid to ask people the chicken list. The people that are on your list that you're afraid to ask them anyway. And the simple conversation might be, hey, listen, I've just hung a shingle as a coach. It might not be a fit for you, but if it's not for you, you probably know somebody that this could help, right? So for example, in my space, let me also add to this. You said you need to niche down. You need to niche down. You need to decide what it is that you provide. And a conversation we had about a year ago, I was afraid to niche down into financial advisors, independent advisors between $50 and $300 million in assets under management. Is the sweet spot for a client for me? Now, does that mean if a small business owner approaches me that I can't work with them? No, there's a lot of things that a solopreneur has in common with that independent advisor. But what shifted was, you said to me, Trent, I think of you and I think of leadership development. Everybody needs that. When you said independent advisor, I have 3 people that I can refer you to right now. And 3 was better than the everybody that you didn't ever refer me to before that. So like us getting very specific. So let me answer your question then directly. What helped me get started is getting specific with regards to who my ideal client is. And you've got great tools at Faith to Influence to help people identify what that is for them. So if you're listening to my voice and you're saying, hey, independent financial advisors, I'm not afraid of that. There's a gajillion of them. Go with God. Go get them. The niche down concept, though, really makes it very specific. So if the Bible's correct in saying, hey, you don't have because you don't ask specifically. And I would encourage new coaches to identify what it is that you feel you're particularly wired to address, and then hit that early and hit that often, and bring this full circle. Bring it to the people that you know. The people that you know trust you and love you. And even if you're not very good at your pitch, they're going to be able to hand wave that part of it and say, hey, I know that this is a good person. They can help people. Let me just help connect them to the people that they can help.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So what I'm receiving is narrowing your niche, being willing to ask people to get on a call and have the conversation, even if it feels scary. Yeah. And the third piece I gathered from that was referrals, because sometimes they're not going to be the ideal client, but they're going to know somebody who's your ideal client. So if you have the right niche, you're willing to ask the people you know to get on a call, and you're willing to ask for referrals. That's how it all gets started, right?
You know, and the referral thing is something I learned at Cutco, where even if, because I started showing Cutco to people like friends and family, people I knew. And I would say that even if this isn't a fit for you, you might know somebody that could use this product. So that actually just was more of a mental gymnastic to call the people I was afraid to call. So like my old math teacher, I was afraid to call him.
Yeah.
Well, that guy wanted to buy the whole set. I'm like, wow, okay. Note to self, the people you think sometimes don't buy, people you think are totally going to get it all, don't get it. And the people you think I don't have a very strong connection, buy everything. Yeah. So my biggest sale I ever made at Cutco was for somebody that I didn't know very well at all. I went to school with her son for 1 semester, called her up, and she had my biggest sale ever. And I would say similarly, have the conversation with everybody. at the cocktail parties, just tell them what you're doing and say, hey, listen, do you know somebody that could benefit from this? Or even perhaps should we have a deeper conversation? So the whole purpose of me sharing that is to embolden your listeners to ask. It's okay to get the no. And one of my favorite parables from Matthew is the parable of the sower and the seed. You know what I'm always struck by with that parable of the sower and the seed is Jesus isn't telling the sower to tighten up where he throws that seed. He says, dude, he's not even worried about it. He's just throwing it, he's chucking it on the path. He's chucking it on the thorny soil. He's throwing it on the rocks everywhere, but he's throwing seed, right? So the key is, if we're in sales, throw a lot of seed. We have to throw a ton of seed because we're not worried about the ones who don't get it. We're not worried about the ones that the birds eat up or burns away from the sun. We're doing it for the one that produces text. And in coaching, that really does fit. Friends, if you're listening to this today, you're in Faith to Influence, or you're thinking about joining CCA, get in there. And here's what's great. They get together and they have a Zoom room where they're just all doing the same hard thing. I'm calling people on my chicken list. I call it the chicken list because I'm chicken to call them, but people I should call that they're a legitimate prospect, and I'm afraid to call them because I'm afraid to get a no. And if you can gut through that, and here's what's great. In this community, you'll find other like-minded people that are just like you, super talented and super afraid of getting the rejection.
Yeah.
This is one of the ways to hack through it.
So true. Okay. Last 3 questions of the day. Number 1, what are you doing right now in sales calls that makes it easy for the right people to say yes?
What am I doing that makes it easy for the right person to say yes? Well, part of it is qualifying on the front end to see if they're like the right fit. Because I've had wrong fits and, trial by error. I'm like, if I've got a situation where 3 people make the decision, I've decided that's not a good fit for me because 3 people is almost an impossible sale to make. It's very hard to get 3 people to consensus. So I want to get the decision maker. And if I've got the decision maker and I'm very clear in terms of what I do. Now, part of building value is promoting to them like what the desired outcome is. And in that case, a lot of times I'm promoting real results. So some of my clients have taken their business from 500,000 in revenue to 1.2. And as a solopreneur, that's a nice jump. Now, if I'm charging 25,000 a year for that individual, but they've grown over 3 years to 1.2, it's over double. That's a good investment. You would take that all day long and you would even pay more if you needed it. But being able to demonstrate and be clear, listen, past performance doesn't mean future results. It's real what I'm presenting. That doesn't mean that's what you will experience together. So I'm very clear that, hey, listen, it's true. It happened. Also, that's not what I'm promoting should happen for you. What I am promoting, though, is that if we ask you good questions, you're going to come up with a better process, a better solution. As that leads to results there, that's what we're going for. I would say one of the things that works for me is I don't work with a contract. So I'm not selling a 1-year program. That might be very different from some of your listeners here, but it's more common for me to work with, without a contract, somebody for 5 years than it is to only work with them for 5 months. And the reason for that is we get results. And when people are growing and they're learning and they're getting more done with maybe less time, that feels really good. So as I present that, it's a little easier when I've got some experience to be able to present that. I would say I've learned some lessons here, Justin. If the person I'm closing right now has some experience with me because they've seen me on a workshop, even if that workshop was free, or they've seen me on a podcast and they're like, man, okay, I kind of vibe with who you are. Those are free offerings that I would say gives them a chance to get to know me a little bit more. And the more they know me, the easier it is for me to ask. If I've been presenting to their team, today I presented a leadership development workshop for a company that I did not get paid for. And one of the people outside of that are going to probably close to be a $15,000 a year contract. That's a good deal all day long. So in terms of long-term marketing, don't be afraid, coach, to take a loss leader type of approach. Don't be afraid to get in front of as many people as you can to do the workshop, to do the leadership development session and grow, give people a chance to get to know you. If they know you, they're going to want to be able to work with you, and that has a price tag associated with it. So
super cool. Okay. Last 2 questions then are, what can people learn from you outside of today's podcast episode?
I would say really where we niche down is with emotional intelligence. And that's something that hits all of us, right? Being able to understand, what am I feeling and can I navigate that well? And once I get decent at that, can I understand where other people are at and be able to help to move them forward? So if one of your listeners is perhaps a solopreneur, or maybe they know a solopreneur, that would be a great thing for you to be able to connect to, is most of them are working really hard, but not necessarily really hard and smart. And so what we do when we dive in there is me and my coaches will help them close the gap between what working hard and smart would look like compared to where they are now. And in most cases, I'm saying in every single case, we're not bringing a curriculum to that. So it makes it less invasive in terms of the surgery. It's more like arthroscopic, right? 3 little incisions. And if most of the healing after that surgery is the cut, not actually the replacement of that joint, right? Most of it's the cut, the healing that needs to come after that. The coaching, when you're introducing a coach to that situation, we can help them level up without bringing in a consultant that might want to turn the place upside down. What we're going to go in, identify strengths-based approach. They probably have best practices that are already working. When we identify what those are, our job is to help punch up those strengths, which mitigate or eliminate the weaknesses. That's where we start to find some lift. And I'm going to say it categorically, in every single experience, when we dive in with a company, they have strengths, things that they're excellent at, that if we focus on those, they move forward. So if you've got listeners, if they want to work with somebody that can help them level up, one of our offerings is kind of a fractional chief operating officer. That's a good way to be able to dive in. If they've got solopreneurs that are looking to level up, that's where we can help them.
Awesome. I love that. And how can people find out more about you and follow you after today's episode?
So Veritas Leadership Group is on all major platforms. If you search for Veritas Leadership Group, you'll probably find us. Our website is veritasleadershipgroup.org. My name's Trent Booth. There are many of us. There's 8 of us out there again. But if you look for me, I'm the first one. So I got Trent Booth on LinkedIn. I got Trent Booth on Facebook and on Instagram. And if they're on YouTube right now, they'll see my face. Yeah, my face is on all of those. So some of you might not be interested in the Veritas logo, but if you see Trent Booth again, would love to connect with you on any of those. And like Justin, I'm very generous in terms of responding to each and every single comment on a post or even direct messages. Yes, the reality is, because cool people have reached back to me and not been too cool for school, it's real important that I pay that forward. And yes, if you message me, I'm going to get back to you.
Thank you so much, Trent. Thank you for listening to today's episode, everyone. If you are new to the podcast, like and subscribe so you can keep listening. And check out Trent Booth at veritasleadershipgroup.org. Thanks, Trent. Thanks, everyone. God bless you. See you next time.